Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to our next venture in the webinar series. Today we're co-presenting. I've got myself and Andrew, who I'll introduce shortly. Andrew's over in our New South Wales head office. Apparently they've closed the office for today just because of Andrew's webinar. Wanted to make sure he had lots of space. Today's webinar is on BAUs and really around the festive break. It's almost Christmas. My wife has already started shopping. I'm hoping that she'll get me something exciting. I personally am going to leave it to the last minute and go to one shop and get every present from the one shop. I haven't chosen what shop it is this year, but it's always a treat. There used to be CD shops, but now those have closed, so I have to branch out. In today's session, we're going to be talking a bit about some of the tips and tricks we've picked up when you are looking at your holiday period, your Christmas break into summer, and you want to have a system that you feel a bit comfortable leaving or in whatever state you're leaving it. Some tips and tricks for that period. And then I'm going to hand over to Andrew to talk about how managed services can help, both long term, but also in some short term spaces for this period where everyone's starting to think about what they're going to have. Are they going to have a Christmas ham or a turkey or maybe a tofurkey? That's what my sister has, a tofurkey. Here is the usual slide that Samantha Swain puts up. So of me, I've been in the industry for a long time. I love doing these webinars. I love doing thought leadership and passing on some of the things that I've learned in the space out to the community. This session will be recorded so you can share it amongst your teammates and your customers, etc. Today I also have Andrew. He'll be talking briefly, but I thought in a short period. He won't be talking briefly. He'll be talking in a brief moment. He's been in the industry almost as long as I have. But that's why he's still dashing. He's dashing good looks. He doesn't have the grey in the beard like I do still. Amongst our services, the part that we're really focusing on today is really around that proactive support and maintenance, removing some of your key person dependencies over that Christmas period, and really minimizing your risk on your data and analytics platforms while you may not be there, while you may be drinking margaritas at the beachfront. I don't know if I'd drink a margarita at the beachfront, actually, now that I think about it. So in terms of some of the tips and tricks, one of the key things to watch out for is the brownout period. You might have a different color perspective for that period before Christmas, where everyone stops their development and says no more from this date. We have found that this is a tormentful time because what happens is a lot of developers try and throw as much code in before Christmas so they can say that they've finished before they go on their Christmas break. And there's maybe less rigor around some of those last minute deployments. From your perspective as looking after the data analytics platform, you want to know what's in that last minute deployment cycle so you can understand what happens, what's in there. If it fails, who do you need to contact, and how important are those things that have been developed over that Christmas? If there is a failure, if one of their last minute deployments causes a problem, what is the importance of it still running over Christmas? Who do you need to contact in the upstream systems if there is a problem? And making sure that you have an understanding of that. I've been in situations where you see that happen, and then there's no one, everyone's deployed it, so they've gone off on their break with that, trying to be carefree, and no one's able to be contacted. Also, you need to be aware, of course, that your users may change their habits of usage over the Christmas break. If you have a usage report, or if you haven't developed one but you want to get some base usage numbers, this is a good period to try and get some going. So, or look at your usage report so you can see who's using it now, so you can see who you should need to contact to find out what their usage is going to be over that Christmas period. Are they still planning to run particular reports or not? Are there any particular critical reports that for them they definitely need to run, and any particular data sets? They may say, look, these particular data sets we don't need, but I definitely need my customer sales report coming out so I can still see what my commission is going to be to pay for all of these presents that I've been buying. And then you sort of need to make sure you understand what the SLA requirements are. It may be that normally you need to be able to respond within an 8-hour period to a task, but over that period, over the Christmas period, that window may extend out. And having an understanding of what that buffer is with your business allows you to then be a little bit more flexible with how quickly you have to respond, allows you to have a bit more planning into maybe going for some day activities during that Christmas period, or being able to relax and communicate out easier. So it allows you to update your communication plan and your tactical moving within the team. Some customers have, if they're not doing accumulating snapshots of their data, or if they're not doing type 2 changes, that they need to make sure they definitely capture those ones. If there's an ability to turn off the loads, it sometimes can be a nice thing to cut it off before the Christmas break and then turn it on again afterwards. It means then that the data is available for users. If they know that it's available as of a particular date in December, then they can then run those feeling comfortable that they know, if they know what the data is and what it represents, that they can still get that usage. It allows you to then not have to worry about, certain loads and updates and things happening or failing, particularly because you've turned those off. And then also one of the key things that we found is making sure you've got as many alerts as you need to. What we find is sometimes you might have some alerts set up for overall failures, etc. But there might be those jobs that when you come in the morning and you log onto your computer, you check certain jobs to make sure they've failed and run certain individual checks that you may make. Some of those, this is the right time to go out and automate some of that monitoring and alerting so that you can get it on your phone or your email through your phone, so that you can then be able to be partying with your wife or partner or children, if you unfortunately have any, and you can then get those messages that way without having to necessarily find a place to log on, get a hotspot, and do it that way. I also find this is a good time to share some nuggets of what's happening in the industry out to your users, get them a little bit interested in thinking about maybe some advanced analytics or things that you want trends for next year. Good period to do that in. We're talking about what some of those are in an upcoming webinar. So I think Andrew's going to briefly touch upon this, but there are many reasons for companies to come to managed services as an option for your BAU services and supporting it. Some might be that you're moving to new platforms and you don't necessarily have the skills at the moment to look after that system, or they've moved their skills to the new fancy platform and they don't really want to spend time in the old platform doing BAU on that. There's a whole bunch of different reasons, maybe people moving on over the Christmas period. The key one that we're talking about at the moment, though, is giving your team a break over the Christmas and summer break. That period where you want to be able to recharge your systems going into the new year. It's been a big year. It's been a long year. So let me hand over to Andrew, who'll give a discussion about managed services. Andrew, if you could ask for to take ownership of it.
So I don't seem to have the take control option for some reason, even though we did a trial run. So I'm going to have to rely on you to be my slide clicker, Alex, if you can continue doing that.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you. So a little bit about Altus Managed Services. So Managed Services is run by Florita DePries in Auckland, and I'm responsible for a slightly new venture for managed services in the Australian region. Now, some of our principles and value proposition to you as a customer, thank you, Alex, is the idea that we allow you to focus on your core business while looking after your data assets and making sure that your investment in data is retained and it adds true value to the business. So you can focus on doing your day jobs, and we're making sure that the data and the assets that you've already built are available on a day-to-day basis and remain of high quality. Now, this isn't just a feature of Altus Managed Services, but as part of our general ethos as well, is that we believe in working with our clients as an extension of your team. So most of our relationships are in place for many years, and our staff become effectively extensions of your own team. We also believe that one of the value propositions is making sure that you can your IT costs effectively are managed and reduced. So you don't need to employ an FTE to do your data management or support your data warehouse or data lake or whatever it might be. You can outsource that to us and effectively save the cost of that full-time FTE, who can then go off and do other value add services for the organization. Altus Consulting is a vendor independent consultancy, which means that we have a broad experience across most of the or all of the main vendors, and we bring that to you as a feature of working with us. You know, we're not just going to talk to you about the technology that you may have in place. We can also bring to you our experience with other verticals or other tool sets. As I mentioned before, around IT costs and staff costs, one of the value adds is that we are removing that key person dependency. So when you work with Altus Managed Services, you're not just having one key person to deal with. What we tend to do is have 2 to 3 people allocated to your account, which means that if any one of them are on leave or have been rotated onto another client, that you've always got somebody who's there to support you. And it also means that your own staff who may be already supporting your platform, should they want to progress in their careers and do something slightly different or leave the organization, you remove that risk because you've diversified and you've distributed that knowledge amongst the Altus Managed Services team. One of the geographical advantages of having a managed service team in Auckland is that obviously they wake up before Australia, which means that any ETL failures that have happened overnight can be recovered and restarted, so that when business starts on the east coast of Australia, any issues have typically been resolved, providing the ETL load can run in that window of time, which obviously typically they can. One of the other things that we pride ourselves at Altus is to be innovative in our thinking and ways of working. You know, Alex in his slides previously was talking about alerting and working smarter, not harder. So it's what we try and do with all of our consulting and managed service engagements is think about how can we continuously improve, how can we innovate, how can we bring our experience that we've gained from other projects, other clients, or other verticals. As I mentioned before, with regards to being an extension of your team, effectively, we pride ourselves on having long-term relationships, long-term partnerships. Alex and I have obviously both been with Altus for many years. Most of our clients have also been with Altus. You know, we've got people that we dealt with when Altus first started 20 years ago who are still using us today. And the last point, which is one of the reasons why we've extended into managed services within Australia, is around data security and the nuances of that, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So next slide, please, Alex. So the 5 principles that we try and bear in mind in delivering managed services is continuous process refinement. So when we onboard or when we start a particular support process, we define the processes, the decisions, the RACI, etc. That's fine, Alex. I can work with this. But that's not a set and forget. We extend that. So if we find that there is a particular workflow within ServiceNow or there's some ambiguity in a particular step that we might be following, then what we do is we continuously evolve and develop the documentation and processes, or we add additional alerting, additional support processes that makes it something which allows us to work smarter, not harder, and it makes the quality and the reliability of the service that we're providing more robust. Open communication, again, a core component of Altus, and our ethos is to be open in our communication, have the courage to give advice, bring our own expertise from outside of your organization, and helps us, again, become embedded, trusted members of your team and organization. With data platforms becoming more and more complex, I think the end-to-end thinking is of more importance as they become broader and involve more services, hybrid cloud, etc. So it's not enough for us to think about the data ingestion from source to the data repository, lake, warehouse, whatever you may have, and then finally reporting. It's about thinking about the vendors that may be supporting the ERP system that you're pulling data from. So it's all about that end-to-end thinking about how do we do vendor management, how do we make sure that we've got a clear understanding of the process, even though it might be outside of the defined scope of what we're doing, doesn't mean that the breadth of our thinking doesn't include it. Fit for purpose governance. So this is, I guess, something that I'm quite passionate about, is not governing and documenting for the sake of governing and documenting. So it's finding what is the appropriate fit for managed services governance that suits your organization. You know, a utility has a very different expectation around ITIL compliance, documentation, races, etc., to a smaller organization that may just need us to be doing break fix. So it's about how do we make sure that we've got the right fit for our processes and documentation, and optimize and automate. So where can we make things run more smoothly? If there's a particular, let's say, an orchestration pattern in how the workflows and the pipelines ingest data, looking at, well, if we were to change this, or if we were to remove this dependency, or if we were to optimize a particular query or a piece of SQL, how do we do that in a proactive way so that it makes everyone's life easier, and we get the data loaded more promptly? Next slide, please, Alex. So this is a summarized version of what Alex mentioned before, and it's worth us considering how do clients come to Altus? And there's a number of different ways, and I've just covered the 5 most common ones. So skills gap, data is the support of data and managed services relating to that is becoming more and more of a high-skilled service. It's not something that just because you're able to do, say, services around, say, Outlook or Azure services, or something in one of the other cloud providers, what we're finding is that being able to support data is a very bespoke skill, and we're finding that customers who try and do it in-house very often find that there are gaps in their own ability to provide that quality of service, just because of their trying to be spread across too many areas, or they may have built a new data platform, and their old skills of sort of on-premise SSIS sort of legacy technologies no longer really relate to what they're trying to do with what might be Azure Data Factory or one of those type of ETL tools. Career goals. So keeping the lights on isn't always the most exciting part of a person's job. I happen to like it, but you know, there are people who want to progress into, say, building new features, and so career goals can often mean that staff may move on, and they could be key people to the success of your solution and the reliability of your solution. So there's suddenly a gap, and we need to come in and we fill that gap by quickly getting up to speed, and transitioning that service to ourselves. Quality of service, which I guess underpins a lot of these decisions, is if it can be compromised. So there could be key reporting periods where data is not available. There could be general data quality issues or lack of communication about how the service is operating. The fourth one, which I love, and to be honest, quite a few of our clients come via this pathway, is that we've built a project for them. You know, the consulting department in Altus has delivered a successful data platform, and they said, "Oh, would you guys mind? You know, are you able to support this?" Which is a great situation for us, in that often we've gone from doing the strategy, doing the design of the solution. Excuse me, my phone. Yeah, so we've gone from start, which is the strategy, the build, and then we finally hand over into our managed services department, which is great. And we also obviously have all that knowledge flowing through as well from the project team that was actually built it, have then transitioned into managed services. And then the last one is again, loss of key resource. Someone's resigned, someone's been is sick, someone's just doesn't have the bandwidth to deliver the service. And again, the customers reach out to us and said, listen, this isn't our key skill set. We want to be doing our day jobs. We've lost this key resource. Are you able to support our platform? Next slide, please, Alex. And again, these are just some of the technologies that we are certified in. We are partners with most of these technology providers in both the consulting and in the managed services space. And again, so some of the things that we do provide, being a little bit more granular about what does Altus managed services do. So we do break fix, which is something's running, it fails, find out what the root cause of the failure is, start it, get it up and running. So not focusing on enhancements, not focusing on building new features, but more about keeping the lights on, making sure that the data is available when you need it. Proactive monitoring and reporting, again, talking to some of the points raised by Alex in the earlier part of this webinar. Christmas time, we want to be proactive in alerts. We want to make sure that you're on the front foot, that you don't get, one of my mottos is, I don't want the business users telling me there's an issue with the data. So I want proactive alerting. I want reports going out. I want to be able to actually call the business, say, listen, your reports are going to be 15 minutes, an hour late today because of there was an issue with the source system, or there was a data quality issue, or there was a change which we need to resolve. So it's about being proactive. It's about being on the front foot. Account management. So we're, again, part of our open communication and relationship management is our account management. So we'll meet with you monthly and discuss what we've observed in the prior month, how we've measured ourselves against whatever SLAs might be in place, emerging trends and incidents. So are there issues that we suggest need to be enhanced? You know, is there a part of the solution that's not as robust as it could be, and we need that to be changed? SLA reporting, as I mentioned. Structured onboarding and disengagement. So we have a managed services framework, which has some of the images on the right talk to that topic. So it's around project management, change management. It's about open communication. It's about making sure that we've collated all your assets, existing data assets and documentation about what you are doing with your data, understanding what are the key times in your reporting cycles. So it's a very structured and designed to reduce the risk of transitioning an internal service to an external party. Project and change management, which I've talked about. We offer database administration as a specific service, deployment into your production environment, and obviously PVT following on from that. Cost management. So, you know, one of the big things around data these days is making sure that what you've budgeted for as a cost for maintaining that platform isn't going to be exceeded. So, how do we proactively manage and report on the spend that you might have with GCP or Azure? And just general environment performance monitoring. Are we seeing that a particular pipeline is slowly getting longer and taking longer and longer to complete? Is it something that needs to go into an enhancement to optimize? Is there something we need to do about the incremental extract? Is there something to do about the load pattern to make it a change how we do a merge, for example? Next slide, please, Alex. Data security. One of the topics that we're discussing more and more with our clients is around their concerns around data security, and particularly across borders. So we've had a few utilities who said, listen, their operating license prevents, even though the data is residing in Australia, their operating license might prevent somebody in New Zealand from accessing it or supporting them in that space. So to make sure that we provide the breadth of service that the marketplace is now requesting, we've actually started the Australian Managed Services Department, so that should a Australian customer require, for whatever legislation or Privacy Act that they are following, that we have that opportunity to support them within the region. Next slide, please. And part of that, we are certified in ISO 27001, be a better way of saying that. We also have internal training programs, so all of our consulting staff and managed services staff are trained in their obligation to keep your data secure. And we have a Chief Information and Security Officer who is responsible for Altus complying with all of with your expectations, but also with the legislation as it stands. Next slide, please. One of the topics that often comes up in conversation with our clients or prospective clients is what services were we able to offer and from what area. So we typically break it down into three categories. Break fix, which is something I talked about earlier, which is, imagine that it's the team that looks at the overnight load, notices that there's been a failure, finds what the root cause of that is, potentially resolves it and restarts the ETL. So it's not about enhancing or changing or growing your solution. It's about making sure that it runs. And so that's the first thing that we do, and that can be done. It's primarily done out of Auckland at the moment, but can be done out of Sydney as well. And then we have enhancements, which are smaller pieces of work, which are typically less than 3 days worth of work. That can be done out of Auckland, or it can be done out of a local consulting office. And local consulting office means that there's Sydney, there's Canberra, there's Melbourne, there's Auckland, which Alex runs, there's London. And then there's project work, which is larger than 3 days worth of work. And again, you would talk to your local regional manager to understand how that would be contracted. Next slide, please. I think that concludes pretty much where we were. Now, do we have, Alex, I'm imagining we've got opportunities in the chat to answer questions. Let's just have a look.
We do have opportunities.
Do we have anyone with any questions?
Any
we
questions?
We have a greeting from Jules.
I always love a good greeting. Whoops. Nice to see you, Jules.
All right. So if our webinar has raised any questions, any thoughts, if you'd like any information, more information about what we do in managed services or more broadly within consulting services, please reach out to us. Our names would be on the website and contact details. You can contact Alex in Auckland. You can contact myself in Sydney, or reach out to Florita, the head of managed services, directly also.
Great. Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you, everybody, for attending this this webinar. The next webinar that I'm involved in is on what are some of the reading materials and things that you should look up and upskill yourself in over the summer breaks while your BAU services are being supported by managed services or by incorporating some of those tips or tricks you've heard today. So join us in that session. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.